Testing, testing. JB here. Really quick. It's April 25th, 2024. Just going to talk really quick about the morning watch list. 5, 10 minutes here, and I'll definitely do a rant later today. We take a look at the markets, pretty much flat as a pancake yesterday. Opened higher, reversed to lows by 1 o'clock, and then rallied off the lows to close pretty much flat. And then Facebook, Meta, after the close, posted a nice quarter beat, but then some cost issues. Guidance wasn't as rosy as some would have liked, and the stock is selling off. It actually broke under 400 for a second, has since bounced a little bit. Meta has had some of these moves, and there's always these headlines. Zuckerberg lost this much billions of dollars after earnings and what have you. And then, of course, the stock hits all-time highs recently. So I think some of it's a function of how much it's rallied recently, and the other is just a little bit on the disappointment side. I actually prefer red opens as opposed to huge gaps and reversals. So we'll see what happens here today. This morning we had the the GDP data coming out cooler than expected. One of the weaker GDP numbers in recent memory. You would think that would be construed a net positive, as that would make the Fed's job a little easier to finally start to cut rates. Instead, the futures sold off a little bit. Some of it, I think, also we had lower than expected weekly jobless claims. So now you have two data points pointing to, well, one is strength, right? Less jobless claims, and the other is weakness with the GDP. Tomorrow's the big day, PCE data, and then after the close today, we have Google, Microsoft, Intel. If there's a continuation of the trend that Meta had after the close yesterday, then maybe we start worrying about that 487 area on the SPY. I'm on the fence here, but I think maybe we can muster at least somewhat of a bounce here. I would love to see back over 504.50 on the SPY. That's the key area. Also, take a look at the stocks over their 50-day moving average on the S&P, over 45%. And then the VIX. The VIX was only up 1% this morning, despite the big pull in the markets. And the small caps were actually green until just the GDP data came out. So, yeah, we'll have to see how this all plays out. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll find some support. So some of the names I've traded yesterday, the big news, the 10K filing finally came out for RILY. Stock soared over 40%, 39%, was actually up much more than that, gave back some of the gains. Some of the key points here, there's no shares to short available, meaning shorts haven't covered, or not a lot of them covered. And two, they're still holding on to their thesis that this is a bankrupt company. So the things with RILY, and I've done these rants before, and I don't want to talk too much because I don't have much time here, is they have a huge amount of debt, right? 2 point something billion in debt, but they have $1.2 billion in cash. Some of it tied up in instruments. They have loans that are payable to them, but they also, a lot of their debt is some of these deals that they've done. So could there be a situation where the debt comes to a head? I guess so. In some of the other situations, because they haven't filed in a timely manner, it's going to be very hard for them to raise capital if they want to do an offering. I think they have 90 days. So those are some of the things. I guess you can paint a bearish picture, but I don't think by any stretch of imagination they're going anywhere near bankrupt. So do I think RILY's $100 stock? I don't know. Maybe it's fair value, $40, 35. I don't know. But I do think based on what happened with the short interest that it's going to overshoot to the upside. So added some spec calls today. I think the longer this goes, the higher the probability that it continues to squeeze. And then in tandem, and I wrote this on the watch on FinTwit in the chat room yesterday about Trupanion. I love Trupanion. It's one of my favorite stories over the years. Great CEO, founded a company because he was trying to get his pet taken care of, couldn't, and then the costs associated. He actually sold his scar business. This is how he came to Trupanion, raised capital, and then the rest is history. It's one of the few insurers that self-insure themselves. Easy to poke holes in this story. The stock, trading at near 52-week lows recently, but you start looking at some of these, at least on a chart basis, I think it was primed for a bounce. And now you couple that with what's going on with RILY, the whole contingent of shorts that are in RILY have been short Trupanion for years, a couple years at least. Whether they're still holding a lot of it, I'm not sure, but there's a 45% short interest in Trupanion, which leads me to believe a lot of folks have been. And that short interest has been there for at least more than a year. But take a look, the RSI oversold conditions starting to bounce every time it's had an oversold condition back in November from 20 all the way up to 32, then back in March. And I think I was in the calls in February. I forget when I was in the calls. Same in March here. Nice little move from 20 all the way up to near 30. And then we're setting up again. We have momentum indicators. You got a bullish crossover setting up, similar to what happens with the RSI. Once this happens, it's boom to the upside. So I think it was setting up to move higher just based on the chart alone. And now you couple this with the possibility that people are going to either start liquidating some of their short position to cover margin calls, which a couple days people start probably getting margin calls, letters, emails from their brokerage saying, hey, you got to cover, or we're going to cover this for you. Or they're raising cash to short more. Who knows? Or just to balance out their portfolio. I just think that will just help push the stock higher in a shorter time frame. Also, report earnings on May 2nd. So that's Trupanion. Let's see here. Okay. AVAV, great open yesterday. Chopped between 161, then hit 162 and change. Locked some of my calls in for over 100%. And then the market melted lower. It was showing some pressure. And it's not the most liquid name, so it moves pretty quickly. Didn't want to lose the rest of my profits, so I locked the last of my 165 strikes in for some profits. I may revisit. If I do, it'll be some like possibly 170 strikes, and I may go out to June. Take a look at the tight Bollinger Bands starting to break out. I think it heads higher, but we'll see if the market cooperates today. Maybe it'll offer an opportunity at the low for me to grab some calls there on to re-enter AVAV. VKTX, they had earnings after the close yesterday. And again, I keep saying it's not really about the earnings. And you look at the headlines, it says Viking Therapeutics loss widens, shares fall after hours. But of course, the loss, they have no revenues, they have no profits, right? And the losses came in lower than expected. But when you're an early stage company with no revenues, you're going to have a loss because you're paying your salaries, you're paying for research, you're paying for lease, you're paying all that stuff, right? So it's comical, the headlines. What was important was the commentary from the company. Really no surprises. I think there was they might be open to doing a bigger oral study with a higher dosage. I forget. I saw someone quote that out. They have $963 million in cash, so it's a $7 billion company. You walk out the cash, now it's only a $6 billion company. And we're still waiting for NASH data. So now that's a wait and see kind of situation. They said second quarter of this year. So they just reiterated on the conference call. It's going to happen in the next 2 months. Hopefully sooner rather than later. You know, I've talked about this. Madrigal's a $4 billion company with their only product is NASH, and they're the first NASH solution on the market. So that's all they are is $4 billion. VKTX, take out the cash, is a $6 billion company. And I don't think their NASH, which could be better than Madrigal's, is anywhere factored or baked into the stock's valuation. And that couples with the fact that their oral GLP-1 data is best in class. Their regular GLP-1 data possibly is best in class, in better than LOI and MVO, Zepbound, Wegovy, all those. So really love the name here. Hopefully it starts melting up into the 70s today and tomorrow, and then work its way up to 100. You're getting analysts out this morning reiterating their buy ratings. I think Stifel was $95. HC Wainwright this morning, $90. I'm sure there'll be more in the coming days. No negative surprise. That's a good thing. I think it just continues to head higher. At some point, maybe I continue to think there's going to be M&A. So that's VKTX. Not really much to add here on Dell. Another disappointing session. Actually, I don't even know if that's the updated chart. But, you know, 126 at the open, 126.55 after the AI news with NVIDIA and Tesla. Then it sold all the way off, and now it's down, close of 120. Was hoping it was going to hold 120. It's gapping lower this morning. IBM, disappointing revenue numbers. LRCX had disappointing results. I don't know if that's weighing as well. Of course, the overall market's selling off. So still love Dell. I'm not going to add anything just yet. I'm going to wait maybe a couple sessions over 122 or so. Then I'll look to get some June strikes to encompass earnings. Okay, a couple other names. So URI, I thought they were reporting earnings yesterday this morning before the open. They reported after the close, nice beat and raise, trading up here in the 660s. That could be a nice one. I think it trades over $700 in the coming months. GWW, I'm going to take off to watch list for now. I haven't traded it, but I was watching it for earnings as a possible play on the infrastructure bill. I think I'll probably just pass on that one. Pool reported a great quarter this morning. A nice beat and raise. They also well, I don't know if they raised guidance, but they talked about sales margins improving. They're heading into a seasonally strong period with obviously it's pool season. I think that just bodes well. I think it heads over $400, and considering it was only at 400 a couple, 5 weeks ago, it was at 420. So it sold off. No news, no catalyst. I think it heads higher, so I'll probably look to get some spec calls. The issue with pool, and I talked about yesterday on the rant, the spreads are so wide, it's hard to get in. And when you have spreads wide and you're trying to get out, it's also hard to get out. And it's important, especially if you're trying to lock profits in or prevent losses, to be able to exit in a timely fashion. You can't do that if there's widespread and not a lot of liquidity. So definitely one I'll be watching, but I'm not going to chase it. If their spreads are wide, it doesn't make sense to trade that. And that's it. I'll be on the AI. Into those AI calls, I outlined that on the watch list yesterday. It's trading back under $22 here. It closed at $22.35. I think it's 3 or 4 days to the upside. Stock rose 30% after its earnings in February, and then gave back all those gains. The stock pretty much cut in half since that point on no news, no catalyst to speak of. So Not saying it can't keep going lower, uh, but I think it trades up near its 50-day moving average in the coming weeks, up to 26 or so. So I'll continue to look for opportunities to play AI. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on the audio later. Rock and roll.